It seems you guys and many of us are serious athletes whose T crashed and required TRT. Can we continue to be serious athletes on TRT as we age without crashing again? What's your experience with that, Russ?
Yeah, I think, I deal with a lot of aging athletes, and like Jim will understand, sometimes I was a triathlete and I was doing everything wrong. It took me 10 years to become one of the fittest cyclists with my group, and I had to stop all of it and walk away. And that's really hard to do. And it's really hard for a guy that was an athlete his whole life, or a woman, to stop. So you've got to, I always say, show me your 3 friends, I'll show you your health. You've got to make, this TRT stuff is great, but if you have unrealistic expectations, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to be miserable because you're going to be always chasing the carrot. I mean, what's important? I think we realize what's important. Like Jim said, he wants to be with his family. He wants to do jujitsu, not like he used to, but he wants to stay active when he's 100. He didn't say he wanted to run a marathon when he's 100. He said, I want to be active. Well, one of my earliest educational experiences was as a paramedic in the early 80s. I went into nursing homes. That's an education for me. I took people in and out of nursing homes. I watched them deteriorate from chronic disease. And then fast forward 20 years, I was setting up anti-aging centers and seeing people in their 60s and 70s. And I'm like, that's what I want. But I had to let go of my competitive spirit. I had to say, listen, I'm going to slow down. I can't do 100-mile bike rides anymore, even though the community is great. I had my tribe with me. I had to find another tribe. You know what I mean? So, I mean, we really got to look in the mirror and say, listen, it's about quality of life and what we do to keep our ass off a bedpan.
Yeah. My contribution to that is, a lot of competitive elite athletes have had repetitive brain injuries, and they probably have contused, their pituitary. I've seen a lot of panhypopituitarism, where they're that little fragile, amazing structure, the pituitary, setting in this bony little cavity. I mean, it just swings into that wall and you can damage it. I've been knocked out several times in my fight career and my tournament career. I have very little doubt that there was some damage done there. It's one of the questions I always ask in the intake is the history of concussions. It's a bigger issue than people realize, and it has a bigger impact, and it can have a lifelong impact. That's very difficult, much more difficult to deal with. Fortunately, we have a lot of more tools in our tool bag than we used to. Peptides have a tremendous amount of promise to replace some of that growth hormone capability that I think gets lost when a lot of these pituitaries get injured, brains get injured. But, sometimes athletes, we're our worst enemies in terms of, trying to extend our career longer than we probably should. It's rare that you have a Randy Couture that's able to, to perform at the level he did at the ages that he did, and, 48, 49, and still competing at the highest of levels. But it can be done. But man, you got to know, you got to get wise. Wisdom comes with age. Not very fast in the Meehan clan, but I finally figured it out that, I really need to stop getting, ligaments and tendons torn by 25-year-old beasts. And, I needed to take it down several notches and reconsider the level that I'm going to perform at. We all have to do that at some point because, there is a wear and tear that no level of hormone optimization is ever going to be able to replicate that youthful, perfect systems that were perfectly designed to and calibrated to, to restore damage. No system that Russ, myself, or any of our colleagues could provide could ever replicate that perfect system of youth. So we can get close to it, but it's not really that close. So, you got to slow down and bring it back to something that is, I think cycling is a great thing to do. You're outside and it's not so repetitive, injuries. But, don't be afraid. Don't think you're a wimp because you're doing yoga or something, something like that, but do something. You got to keep moving. That's for sure. But it may not be, fighting in jiu-jitsu tournaments every other month.
Right.
Okay, probably. Do you see, guys, an increase with insomnia or anxiety once starting man on testosterone? I mean,
like I said, with the people that I deal with the outliers that are extremely in a bad spot in their life, and what Jim mentioned too earlier, we have to look at the neurotransmitters and really pay attention to that DHT, because it could exacerbate. I don't like using the word mental illness because I think they're all labels. There's no blood test for bipolar. There's no blood test for schizophrenia or depression, but we know those are symptoms that people have. So I think, depending on where you are in your life, I do think that these things could be exacerbated if you're not optimizing the testosterone the right way and looking at the areas that we're talking about here today, the microbiome, the mitochondria, the HPA-G axis and the environment. And basically, where are you and where are you in your life? What is causing the most stress in your life right now? Is it the job? Are you in a job that you hate? Are you going through a divorce? Are you in an unhappy marriage? All that comes into play. Well, like when I'm doing a discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it has less to do with testosterone and hormone optimization therapy than it just has to do with all the other things that surround that. I mean, we got too much, blue wavelength, high energy light stimulating our photoreceptors, disrupting our melatonin. If you got your face in Facebook at 10 o'clock at night, you're not going to sleep well. You're going to disrupt a whole bunch of things. You got it. There are a lot of things that we have control of to improve our sleep. The electromagnetic fields that we're saturated in, if you've got your iPhone plugged into the wall and then setting, 6 inches from your head, you're not going to sleep well. If you've got a lot of electromagnetic field in your bedroom, you're disrupting your sleep. So, there's so many things that we can do to improve our sleep. I think hormone therapy, in my experience, done well is more, supportive of optimal sleep, but it's not a treatment in and of itself. You also you got to do all of these other things to improve and optimize your environment for sleeping, your mind for sleeping. You got to learn to shut it off and journal your worries, close it, and worry about tomorrow instead of laying there in bed worrying about what you're going to do. What all the problems and the battles that you've got to fight. So I think it's, as long as you are you're measuring your responses, your lab levels, you're on a good hormone program, you should have some of the essential elements for optimal sleep, not the reverse. But again, if you're having some problems with sleep and you think it's related to your hormone therapy, you might have to change things around, like the gentleman in the previous question. Listen to your body. Experiment with your body, work with your doctor to move things around, change the dosing, change the timing until you find something that works for your specific physiology. But be careful about the correlation equals causation, because it's just because you started your hormone replacement therapy and now you're not sleeping well, but you're kind of ignoring all of the other things. The fact that you drank 2 glasses of wine right before you went to bed, or that is your standard kind of routine before bed. Any high sugar, carbohydrate laden meal too close to bedtime is going to disrupt sleep. Alcohol is going to disrupt sleep. So really pay some attention to all of these other causative factors and investigate them all to get a better idea as to what really is causing the problem.
Okay, that's clear. So one last question that was for Ross. Ross said that thyroid meds stress the adrenals. Can you explain how T meds do that? Or did I misunderstand?
Well, what was that again?
How do thyroid meds stress the adrenals?
Well, a lot of times, and we see this again, it's not a sweeping generalization, but a lot of people that are just taking thyroid medication at a certain dose and their symptoms are not, and they're not doing the proper blood work and their symptoms aren't dissipating, it's because the doctor isn't looking at the adrenal glands. So if you're treating the thyroid in isolation like they have been for 100 years and not looking at, reverse T3, as Jim mentioned earlier, free T3, free T4, not looking at the microdosing of testosterone, you really, if you have an elevator that goes to the 100th floor and you only treat T4, you're only going to the 50th floor, if that makes sense. So remember, thyroid and the adrenal glands, they work together. And one thing that's clear, everything is interconnected and we are all biochemically unique. We have to ask questions. We have to keep a logbook. We have to, really, write down how we're feeling and keep a logbook to track this stuff, because you can't lay this all on the doctor. You got to step up and be proactive with your health, and ask the tough questions.
Okay.
I completely agree. I don't really have much to add to that.
Okay, thank you guys. So we'll stop the questions now. Before we end, and that was actually an idea of Dr. Keith Nichols. Too bad he couldn't make it today to join us. But Keith Nichols proposed that we do a bro science section on the end of the roundtable each time. So I would ask you guys, what piece of bro science, what best or maybe worst piece of bro science did you hear or read online in the forums, on the message boards the last weeks? Any funny stories or questions that you read? Jim, anything?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll kind of double down on the the transcranial DHT. Don't worry about measuring it. That there's so much right now. There's a bunch of hype along those lines. I mean, try the transcranial approach, transcranial testosterone only approach, but don't ignore your lab levels. You really need to know what you need to know what your DHT levels are doing. You need to know what your estradiol levels are. I think that any advice that is, no, just put it on, put that cream on your scrotum and don't worry about it. As long as you feel good, you're okay. You're always going to feel good in the beginning, and then it's going to kind of start to tail off, or you're going to start blowing out your hair, your prostate. There's other things that can go wrong if you're not really watching some of the super physiologic results that can sometimes happen. So measure and monitor is reasonable advice.
Okay, Russ, you heard anything funny of bro science last week?
I think the bro science to me is like when somebody uses the term sheeple. I think we're all on a journey. I love the bro science because everybody's asking questions. There's something powerful and transforming about asking questions. So I don't, of course, this all evolved from the bodybuilding industry. And there's three types of people that want to, put on muscle mass, people that are interested in performance, people that just want to get through the day, like Jim, and live to be 100. And then there's some guys that have an undiagnosed pathology. So the bro science is a good thing because it gets everybody thinking.
I agree with that. I learned a lot more from the message boards in the early years than I ever learned from any medical textbook or lecture. So I agree with Russ 100%. There's a lot of very smart people out there giving good advice. I mean, Russ has been on those message boards for a long time. I was very glad to see that I got to speak with you today. I've been following your advice and work for a long time. And, there are those people that have been contributing for a long time, and they really know what they're talking about. And there is some good advice out there. You just have to be discerning in that advice, because just as there's great advice, there is really horrible advice. And there are, there's just some people that seem to chime in and they don't know quite as much as what they think they know. And they tend to be some of the most vocal voices out there. And they also tend to run off a lot of us, like Russ and many of my other colleagues. I mean, I get on those message boards and I always go, why do because somebody's always got to get adversarial about it. I just want to share information, and I want to kind of progress the science and learn from each other. But there's some of those guys, I think they're all high on DHT sometimes, that just argue.
I don't understand the medical system where, The third leading cause of death in the United States is our own medical system. We all need to stick together. Why people compartmentalize and act that way, I have no clue. It blows me away.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Okay, so let's round this one up, guys. Maybe first, you, Jim, if people want to reach out to you, work with you, or contact you, what is the best way to do that? Your website and other contact data?
Yeah, you can just, my company is Catalyst MD. You can find me through meehanmd.com, or you can contact support at catalystmd.com. That's CATALYSTMD.com. And that's probably the best way to get into our program. And I am accepting new patients, and always happy to help people just do what I did, transform their lives, become, someone that's working in their purpose and fulfilling the purpose for which they were perfectly created. So I just love doing that, and I'd love to help anybody that wants to do that with me. Okay, great. And you, Russ, I looked into your website today. It's a beautiful piece of work.
Thank you. Yeah,
so tell the people how they can reach you.
Thank you. You could go to Scala Precision Health. I've got a team in Orlando, Florida. We do a lot of online training. You can see my book on Amazon. I put it in the Kindle version. It's American Biohacker. And that's on the Kindle version on Amazon right now. We just published that book a while back. And then I started the Russ Scala YouTube channel, sort of like what you guys are doing. I just want to get information into people's hands. And that's sort of my way of paying back for, listen, I was a paramedic attached to the SWAT team. I didn't think I was going to make it to 40. So I'm in my 60s now, and thank God I'm happy every day I get up and stare at my feet. And I want to partner with guys just like you.